Hi everyone, this is Alex from Dynamic Coordination, and I'm going to talk to you today about some movements we do in our Spine Awakenings class. Specifically, I wanted to talk about the head roll and some parts of it that sometimes get a little confusing. So in class, we use a couple of different head rolls. One is a very tiny circumference head roll that looks something like this, one way and the other. And then the other head roll includes a lot more of the spine and the upper body that goes more like that. So when we are doing the first head roll, the very small one, the idea is to really keep the lower part of the neck in line with the rest of the spine. So we're not trying to get an entire neck involved in the head roll. It almost feels like the head that is balancing on top of the spine is just turning by itself, but taking maybe the first 3 top vertebrae along with it for a ride. Yeah. So you really feel that it is really the head that is creating the circle. When we increase the circumference of that circle, we start to involve more of the neck, more of the thoracic spine as well, and maybe even getting all the way down to the lumbar area. That depends on how big of a circle you want to make it. However, even if you make the circle bigger, still do include that movement, that small movement that is happening in a small circle, which means allowing the top vertebra to be flexible and not just going, okay, now I'm going to make a bigger circle, so I'm going to move like this. So that is not so much of a head roll, but just a whole upper body roll. Now this is a head roll that moves into the upper body, so it includes the upper body, but it still is a head roll. So that's generally what I mean by, or how I would like to see those head rolls being performed. Now, one other part that I wanted to specifically talk about is the part of the head roll that when the head goes back. It's a place where, when performed incorrectly, can actually cause some discomfort and even some injuries. So I would really like you to pay attention to how to do it correctly. So what happens quite often is that when people go move the head back in a head roll, they tend to collapse, and I'm going to turn to show you, I'm going to turn sideways, they tend to collapse the neck this way. Even when I speak, my voice is getting difficult to use because I'm compressing the throat while doing it. So important thing is that when we are going back, we actually think of elongating the neck up. So remember when I just was talking about the small head circle? Yeah, so only the head moves on top of the spine and the circumference of the circle is small. So when I go up, even in a bigger circle, my neck does not go any further back. What makes an impression of a bigger circle on the backward part is the involvement of the thoracic area of the spine. So my head in both small circle and in a bigger circle will only go to here, but in a bigger circle I'm going to involve the other areas of the spine. Not that I'm trying to create more movement right in the atlanto-occipital joint, which is the area where the skull is resting on top of the spine. So if we continue, let's say, if we go into the head roll here, and I'm about to go back, instead of pushing the head back, I'm going to think of extending upwards. So I'm looking pretty much straight up at that moment, but it is done also through hyperextension in my thoracic spine, rather than just working in my neck. One way to make sure that this happens correctly, now I'm going to turn back to you, is to place your hands on your neck right underneath the occipital bone. So the occipital bone is those two little dimples here in the back of the head. And if you place your hands on your neck here and start to look up, if you feel that the whole neck is starting to tense up and shorten, that means that you're starting to collapse the entire neck. Instead, what you're trying to do is almost feel like when you practice that way, use your hands to lift the head slightly, as if you wanted to pull your head very gently up and away from your torso. Now, once you're in this position, look up, but don't allow the neck again to collapse. So you feel that lift through your hands. And now, let's say if I were to do a roll and get into that range of motion, I help myself up with the hands to make sure that the neck stays nicely elongated. Now if I let go of the hands and continue the roll, even when I go through the same range here, I imagine as if those hands were still there lifting me up. So that will ensure that when you do any sort of head rolls, you will not collapse your neck right in the area where the head meets the spine. So that's all for today. Hopefully this clarifies some of the confusion, and I hope you will continue exercising and finding nice mobility in your entire spine.